The old pickup truck coughed once, then rolled to a stop in front of Silverthorne Academy's main gate like it had wandered into the wrong movie. Every other vehicle on the circular drive looked polished enough to reflect the string lights hanging from the stone arches. Long black sedans, smooth silver coupes, a white luxury SUV with a driver in gloves. The school itself stood above them all, lit in gold from the ground up, its towers and stained glass shining against the dark blue evening like a castle built for people who had forgotten what ordinary life looked like. Marcus Vance switched off the engine and sat still for a second. As a black single dad in his 30s, he was acutely aware of how their presence registered in a space like this, but his focus remained entirely on the passenger seat. Beside him, his daughter smoothed both hands over the front of her pale blue dress, then reached for the cardboard carrying case on her lap. She was 7, all warm brown skin, tight natural curls, and serious eyes, and tonight she looked as if she were trying very hard to be brave enough for 2 people. "Does it look okay?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked at her dress. He had ironed it twice, then once more after dinner when he noticed one wrinkle near the hem. The ribbon around the waist had been sewn back on by hand under the kitchen light. Her little white shoes were not new, but they were polished until they shone. "You look perfect, Maya," he said, his deep brown hands resting steady on the steering wheel. She gave him a small nod, but her fingers kept tightening around the edge of the case. Inside it was the project she had built for the school's Young Innovators exhibition. A palm-sized emergency power unit she called the Little Beacon. Fold-out solar film, a hand crank on the side, a sealed salt water battery cell she had designed with his help at the workbench, though the idea had been entirely hers. Small, cheap, durable. Enough power to run a light for hours, charge a phone, or keep a pediatric pulse monitor alive through an outage. It had won first place 3 days ago. At least it had. Tonight, Silverthorne Academy was hosting its annual charity gala in the Grand Hall, where donors would drink from thin crystal glasses, praise the school's commitment to excellence, and present the founder's Young Innovator Medal in front of half the city's most influential families. And sometime between Maya's honest win and tonight's public ceremony, someone at the school had decided that first place should belong to someone else. Marcus opened his door, cold evening air spilled into the truck. Before he and Maya had taken 3 steps, a security guard moved in front of them with a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. "Service entrance is around the back," the guard said, giving Marcus's old canvas jacket a quick glance, then the truck, then the cardboard case. "Deliveries and maintenance go through the south gate." Maya went very still. Marcus rested one large, protective hand lightly between her shoulders, feeling the tension in her small frame. "We're not here for deliveries," he said, his voice dropping into a low, resonant register. The guard's smile tightened. "Tonight's event is invitation only." Marcus reached into his inside pocket and handed him a cream card with silver lettering. The guard took it, looked down, then looked back up at Marcus, as if expecting the paper to apologize for itself. The card was real, embossed, proper seal. 2 names there are. Mr. Marcus Vance and Miss Maya Vance. The guard cleared his throat. "Of course. My mistake." Maya lowered her eyes. Marcus took the invitation back without a word. As they walked past, he heard the guard murmur into his shoulder radio, "They're coming in now. Not welcomed. Announced." At the top of the steps, a woman in a gold gown paused in the doorway and looked them over openly. Her son, maybe 8, stood beside her in a navy blazer with a silver school crest on the pocket. The boy saw Maya's case and smirked. "Mom," he whispered loudly, "is that the battery girl?" The woman gave a low, amused laugh. Apparently, Maya's hand found Marcus's, and he squeezed it at once. "Eyes up, baby girl," he murmured. She nodded and lifted her chin, though he felt how cold her fingers were. Inside, the entrance hall was all marble and candles and careful voices. A violin quartet played from a balcony above. Students in crisp uniforms moved between floral displays nearly as tall as Marcus. Faculty members stood in little groups with polished smiles, while parents in evening wear carried themselves with the easy arrogance of people accustomed to being deferred to. Marcus looked like a laborer who had come to pick someone up after the event. That was the point. He wore clean work boots, dark jeans, a plain button-down shirt, and the old brown jacket he had owned for years. It fit his broad frame well, but there was no mistaking its age. He had the calloused, capable hands of a man who still fixed things himself, which he did. The truck outside was his. This small farmhouse outside town was his. The life he had built after Nia died was simple on purpose, not by accident. Most people could not imagine that simplicity chosen by wealth. They only recognized simplicity forced by lack of it. A young woman with a staff badge approached, carrying a clipboard against her chest. She looked tired in a way honest people look tired in dishonest places. "Mr. Vance?" she asked. Marcus turned. "I'm Nora Ellis, lower science faculty." Her eyes flicked to Maya and softened, recognizing the bright girl with the beautiful dark coils of hair. "Congratulations, Maya. Your prototype impressed every technical judge." Maya blinked. "Thank you." Nora lowered her voice. "Your display is still in the East Hall, but there may be confusion later tonight." Marcus studied her face. She wanted to say more, but not there. Before he could answer, a taller man in a tailored tuxedo stepped smoothly into view. His silver hair was perfect, so was his smile. "Mr. Vance," he offered a hand, Headmaster Theodore Bram. "Welcome to Silverthorne." Marcus shook his hand once, noting how Bram's gaze dropped instantly to Maya. "And our young inventor. We're pleased you could join us." The words were polite. The tone said something else entirely. "You should be grateful to be here." Maya hugged the case closer. Bram continued, "The gala can be overwhelming for new families. I trust you'll understand that tonight is as much about community culture as academics." Marcus said nothing, his dark face an unreadable mask. The headmaster's smile thinned a fraction. "If you need assistance finding your table, someone can help. Our event includes donor acknowledgments, the student awards, and a scholarship update. Very special evening." "Scholarship update?" Maya asked, before she could stop herself. Bram looked at her as if surprised she had spoken. "Only a standard review. These things happen." Then he nodded once and moved on, already turning toward a couple entering behind them. Maya looked up at Marcus. "What does that mean?" He knelt so they were eye level, looking directly into her brown eyes. "It means adults who should know better are playing games because of the award." He could have lied. He never lied to her when the truth mattered. "Maybe," he said. Her mouth trembled, just once. "Did I do something wrong?" His answer came steady and low. "No. And before tonight ends, they'll know that too." She searched his face for a moment, then nodded, trusting him, because she always had. Marcus rose and took the carrying case from her gently. "Show me where your project is." The East Hall had been turned into a glossy exhibition room, all tall banners and white display pedestals under bright spotlights. Student projects stood arranged in a curve: robotics, water filtration models, climate sensors, polished presentations built with expensive materials, and even more expensive adult help. Maya's table was near the end. Her display board had been shifted half out of the light. The printed first place card that had been there on judging day was gone, and in its place sat a smaller card that read, "Under review." Maya stopped walking. Marcus set the carrying case down carefully on the table and opened it. The little beacon sat nestled in foam, handmade and neat. The fold-out panels were patched at one corner where Maya had improved the hinge design after her first version cracked. Labels written in her careful handwriting explained the battery cell, the crank input, the low-voltage output ports, and the emergency light mode. At the top of the display board, under the title, was one line Maya had insisted on adding, "For kids who get scared when the lights go out." Marcus remembered the first night she had thought of it. A storm. Rain against the windows. Their power out for 3 hours. Maya sitting in a blanket fort with a flashlight under her chin, trying to joke about monsters while still checking every few minutes to make sure the phone battery was not dying. Nia had once worked nights in pediatric care before the illness took her. She used to say that darkness frightened children more than pain sometimes. Maya remembered that. So she had built something for fear. Something useful. Something real. Next to her table stood the display for Mason Wexler, the boy from the doorway. His project was a sleek, drone-based emergency delivery concept mounted on acrylic stands with glossy printed branding. Impressive looking, not functional. According to the judge's original comments, it had failed 2 stability tests and had been mostly theoretical. Still, it now occupied the center spotlight, and a new silver ribbon hung beside it. Nora Ellis appeared again, stopping just long enough to set a folded program on the edge of Maya's table. "There's a revised ceremony order in there," she said quietly. "Don't open it here." Marcus met her eyes. "Thank you." She swallowed, gave a tiny nod, and moved away before anyone could notice. Maya stared at Mason's drone display, then at her own missing ribbon. They changed it, not a question. Marcus put one large brown hand on her shoulder. Looks that way. But the judges said mine worked better. It did. Then why? He looked across the room. On the far side, Mason's mother stood speaking with Headmaster Bram and a heavy-set man with a red silk tie and a board pin on his lapel. She was elegant in deep green satin, blonde hair swept high, posture like a queen addressing servants. Bram leaned toward her. The man with the board pin laughed at something she said. Because that woman expects the world to kneel, Marcus thought. Because the headmaster is afraid of losing money. Because a school built to promise opportunity has learned to auction it. But he kept that to himself. Sometimes he said to Maya, people who lose fairly try to change the rules afterward. Maya looked at her little machine. That's cheating. Yes. Her lips pressed together. Then why are they allowed? That question hurt more than the others, because children always ask the question adults spent their lives avoiding. Marcus brushed a loose curl back from her forehead. They shouldn't be. A voice floated over from the other side of the hall. There she is. Mason Wexler came over with the confidence of a child who had never been taught limits. His mother followed several steps behind, smiling as if indulgence were kindness. Mason pointed at the little beacon. My mom said the judges felt sorry for you because your project looked homemade. Maya stiffened. It is homemade, she said quietly. I made it. The boy rolled his eyes. Exactly. His mother finally reached them. Mason, she said, though without any intention of stopping him. Not rude. Then she turned her bright, cool smile on Marcus. I'm Helena Wexler, she said. Mason's mother. We've heard quite a lot about Maya's sweet little project. Marcus gave a brief nod. Marcus Vance. Her gaze traveled over his jacket, his boots, the hand-repaired corner of the display board, the stitching on Maya's ribbon. She assessed them in one smooth sweep and filed them where she believed they belonged. The Academy likes to be generous, she said. It creates wonderful stories. Maya looked confused. Marcus did not. Helena bent slightly toward the girl. That's a pretty dress, darling. Did someone in the scholarship office help you find it? Maya's brown face went warm. My dad fixed it. How resourceful, Helena said. Marcus's voice stayed perfectly even. You seem very interested in my daughter's clothes. The smile on Helena's mouth sharpened. Only because appearances matter here. Silverthorne prepares children for the real world. No, Marcus said, looking down at her with calm authority. A certain kind of world. For the first time, her expression lost some of its polish. Before she could reply, a bell chimed through the hall, signaling guests to move toward dinner. Helena touched Mason's shoulder. Come along, we'll let others enjoy the evening too. As they walked away, Mason looked back and whispered to Maya, You're not winning anything. Maya stared at the floor until they were gone. Marcus waited until she looked up. What do we do when people want us smaller than we are? She sniffed once and tried to stand straighter. We don't shrink. That's my girl. The grand hall had been transformed into a cathedral of money. Chandeliers blazed overhead. Round tables draped in ivory cloth filled the room beneath a stage framed by silver curtains and the school crest. A string quartet had given way to soft piano. Waiters moved like shadows. A giant screen behind the stage cycled through smiling student photographs, donor names, and scripted phrases about excellence, character, leadership. Marcus and Maya's table was in the far back corner, half blocked by a floral column and near the swinging doors to the service corridor. Every time the kitchen opened, heat and the smell of butter rolled through. From the front, where the board members and major donors sat, they would barely be visible. Maya looked around. Did they forget our seats? Marcus pulled out her chair. No, she sat down slowly. Their table held 2 retired faculty members, one nervous young parent who smiled apologetically at them, and a man in a tuxedo who spent several minutes trying to hand Marcus a coat check claim ticket before realizing he was not hired staff. A waiter appeared with sparkling water and paused beside Marcus. The driver's meal service is downstairs, sir. The whole table went silent. Marcus looked up at him, the stark contrast of his dark skin against the white linen of the room making the mistake all too predictable. I'm not a driver, the waiter flushed. I'm sorry. It happens, Marcus said, but he noted the man's face anyway. Not because a mistaken waiter mattered, but because every room had its own pecking order, and tonight he intended to remember every person who enforced it. On stage, Headmaster Bram took the microphone and welcomed everyone to Silverthorne's annual Light for Learning Gala. He spoke smoothly about tradition, excellence, and social responsibility. Screens behind him displayed photos of the campus, the Vance Naya Science Hall, the Vance Naya Reading Atrium, the Vance Naya Student Grant Program. Marcus watched in cold silence. No one at Silverthorne knew Nia the way he did. Not the way she laughed into her shoulder when trying not to wake Maya as a baby. Not the way she sat cross-legged on the kitchen counter, writing down ideas for children's outreach clinics and low-cost family support networks. Not the way she had once said, during another storm years before, "Every child deserves at least one light that stays on." After she died, Marcus had taken the financial empire he had spent 15 brutal years building through private investments, strategic acquisitions, and patience sharp enough to look like absence, and he had focused entirely on his daughter. He had stepped away from public life almost overnight. He had buried his name under trusts, foundations, and legal layers thick enough to make gossip useless. He no longer cared about magazines, rankings, or invitations. But Nia had believed in educational access, in quiet brilliance, in children who were overlooked because they came without polish. So, he had funded schools, labs, libraries, scholarship tracks, and the largest stream of money running through Silverthorne Academy had come, year after year, from a donor so carefully concealed that most of the board believed the benefactor to be some old family office in another state. Only a very small number of people knew where authority actually lived. At the front table, Victor Lang leaned back in his chair, as if the school were already his inheritance. He was the chairman of the Larkstone Educational Trust, the non-profit arm that managed Silverthorne scholarship funds and donor initiatives. Neat beard, diamond cufflinks, public face of charitable leadership. Also, if Marcus's suspicions were correct, a thief with manners. Helena Wexler sat near him, glowing with the smug comfort of a woman who never doubted outcomes arranged in her favor. Mason beside her grinned at the room each time his face appeared on the screen. A volunteer in pearls came to the back tables carrying pledge cards on silver trays. She set one in front of Marcus with a smile too bright to be sincere. "Tonight's minimum family commitment begins at 5,000, she said, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "If you'd rather not write a number, you may leave it blank." The retired faculty woman across from Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Maya went still beside him. Marcus picked up the card and the pen. The volunteer waited. He folded the card once, laid it beside his plate, and said, "I'll decide after the program." The woman smiled again, this time with open contempt. "Of course." A few minutes later, Helena Wexler passed their table on her way back from greeting someone near the stage. She stopped when she saw the folded card. "Not everyone understands how these evenings work," she said pleasantly. Marcus looked up. "Then this must be a good chance to learn." Her eyes flickered. She put one hand on the back of Maya's chair and lowered her voice in the intimate tone bullies loved because it made cruelty sound cultured. "People like you," she said, looking straight at Marcus now, "should be grateful your child was even allowed through the door." The words landed like a slap. At the next table, someone pretended not to hear. Maya's breath caught. Marcus set his water glass down very carefully on the white tablecloth. For one long second, Helena must have thought he would rise, make a scene, justify every silent judgment already hanging over him. He did none of that. Instead, he said, "Take your hand off my daughter's chair. No volume. No threat. Just a flat instruction with enough weight behind it to make her obey before pride caught up to reflex." Helena straightened and gave a small laugh. Touchy. Then she moved on. Maya stared hard at her lap. Marcus leaned toward her. "Look at me." She did. What she said tells you who she is. Nothing else. Maya nodded, but tears had gathered in her eyes anyway. She blinked them back, ashamed to let them fall in public. That hurt him more than if she had sobbed. Dinner passed in a blur of speeches and soft cruelty. Headmaster Bram spoke of inclusion while excluding. Victor Lang praised merit while selling it. Donors applauded themselves. Students from the wealthiest families were called to the stage for special recognition in categories broad enough to fit whichever surname mattered most that year. At one point, a trustee stopped by their table and asked Marcus whether he worked in facilities or grounds. At another, One of Mason's friends whispered loudly that Maya's science project looked like a lunchbox with wires. Each insult was minor enough to deny. Together they formed a wall, and Marcus kept watching. Halfway through the dessert course, Nora Ellis appeared behind him, like someone forcing courage through fear. "Mr. Vance," she murmured, "I'm sorry. I have something you should see." She slipped a small flash drive into his warm brown palm. "Original scoring sheets, email printouts. I copied what I could." Her voice shook. Headmaster Bram ordered the faculty panel to revise Maya's presentation score after Mrs. Wexler promised a new donor package if Mason won tonight. "Mr. Lang signed off on the scholarship transfer. They told us it was about institutional fit." Marcus closed his hand around the drive. Nora swallowed hard. "There's more. Scholarship names have been altered before. I think funds are being rerouted." "I didn't know how high it went until this week." "Why give this to me?" he asked. She looked toward Maya, who was carefully cutting a dessert she had no appetite to eat. "Because she earned it," Nora said. "And because if no one stops them, they'll keep teaching children that truth loses to money." Marcus gave one short nod. "Thank you." She stepped back. "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner." "You're speaking now." On stage, the Master of Ceremonies invited everyone to stay seated for the Founders Young Innovator Medal and accompanying NIA Grant Scholarship announcement. Maya's fork stopped in midair. The room quieted with the hunger of people who loved public reward. Headmaster Bram returned to the microphone carrying a folder. The giant screens behind him displayed photos from the science exhibition. Maya's picture appeared for a moment, her beautiful dark coils tied back, smiling shyly beside the little beacon, then disappeared too quickly. Bram folded his hands. "This year," he began, "our students demonstrated remarkable imagination and heart. The judging was extremely close." Maya's back went rigid. Marcus slid his chair back half an inch, not yet standing. "Ready?" Bram continued, voice rich with false regret. "As part of our final review, however, the administration considered not only technical performance, but also broader standards of conduct, representational maturity, and institutional character." A murmur passed through the hall. Marcus saw Victor Lang lower his head, hiding a smile behind his glass. Bram opened the folder. "After that review, the school has decided to amend the initial results." The room came alive, some with curiosity, some with satisfaction. Maya looked at Marcus, confused and pale. Bram smiled out at the audience. "The Founders Young Innovator Medal and NIA Grant Scholarship will be awarded to Mason Wexler for his visionary emergency response concept." Applause broke from the front tables at once. Loud, delighted, certain. Mason shot out of his chair in triumph. Helena Wexler clapped with calm elegance, as if justice had simply corrected itself. At the back, Maya did not move. Her face emptied in the way children's faces did when something cruel happened too fast for tears to catch up. Then Bram added, "And before we bring Mason to the stage, we'd like to recognize Maya Vance for her participation." "Maya, would you join us and bring your project marker so our staff can update the display after the program?" Participation. Update the display. Take down your own victory in front of everyone and pretend the humiliation is educational. Several people turned in their seats to look at the back corner where Maya sat. One of the screens showed her name in smaller letters beneath Mason's. She whispered, "Dad." Marcus stood. The hall watched him as he moved around the table and held out his hand to his daughter. Maya rose because he asked her to, though her legs looked unsteady. Together, they walked the long aisle toward the stage while the audience followed with the silent appetite reserved for public embarrassment. At the steps, a staff member in a school blazer reached down toward Maya's hands. "Just the marker, sweetheart," he said with a practiced smile. Then, noticing the small silver medallion pinned to the inside flap of her project case, the one the judging panel had given her after the exhibition, his expression shifted. "And the preliminary medal as well. We'll need that returned before the official presentation." The words were gentle. The act was not. Maya looked at the medallion as if she had forgotten it was there. She had tucked it inside the case to keep it safe. She had probably imagined walking on stage tonight and hearing her name called with that shy, startled smile she got whenever praise caught her off guard. Now, an adult with polished shoes was asking her to hand it over like a mistake. Around them, people leaned to watch. Headmaster Bram stood near the microphone with the expression of a man pretending this was all unfortunate, but necessary. Helena Wexler watched from the front table without blinking. Victor Lang sat back with both hands folded, serene as a judge over a rigged trial. Maya's fingers trembled as she touched the metal. "Do I have to?" she whispered. The staff member looked toward Bram. Bram gave a tiny nod. Maya turned her face. She did not cry. That somehow made it worse. Her eyes were wide and hurt, and trying not to understand. That was the moment the room crossed a line it could not uncross. Marcus walked up the steps and stopped beside her. The master of ceremonies shifted nervously. "Sir, if you could return to your table, we'll complete the presentation," and Marcus did not even look at him. He kept his eyes locked on Bram. Then, in a voice so calm it cut cleaner than shouting ever could, he asked, "How much does it cost to buy this school?" For half a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the laughter started. It began at the front, one sharp, amused burst from a board member. Then another from a donor's husband. Then a wave of open mockery rolled through the hall. A few people covered their mouths. Others did not bother. Someone near the center actually clapped once as if Marcus had delivered the evening's best joke. Helena Wexler smiled with open disbelief. "Oh, this is embarrassing." Victor Lang chuckled into his glass. Someone should escort him out. Even Bram looked relieved. This at least fit the story they had already written for Marcus Vance. A proud black man losing control in a room not meant for him. Maya stood frozen beside the display case, still holding the edge of her medal. Marcus took out his phone. No dramatic speech. No anger. He unlocked the screen, opened a single message thread, and typed 8 words. "Proceed now. Full authorization. Main hall. No delay." He hit send, put the phone away, and rested one hand on Maya's shoulder. The laughter was still fading when he said, "Go ahead, headmaster. Finish what you were doing." Bram's brows drew together. "Mr. Vance, this is not the place for theatrics." Marcus's expression did not change. "No, it's the place for truth. I'd like to see how far you're willing to go before it walks through that door." A pulse of unease moved through the hall, subtle but real. Victor Lang leaned forward. Security. 2 guards stepped in from the side aisle, but before they reached the stage, the main doors at the back of the hall opened. Not one door, both. Cold night air swept in beneath the chandeliers. Every head turned. 3 black sedans stood outside at the top of the drive, their doors already open. Men and women in dark coats and tailored suits entered with the quiet speed of people who did not ask permission because they did not need it. First came 2 attorneys carrying slim leather portfolios. Behind them, a silver-haired woman Marcus recognized instantly, Margaret Voss, chief legal trustee for the Calder Foundation structure. Next to her walked a tall man with wire-rimmed glasses from Harrow Bank's private fiduciary division. After them came 2 forensic auditors, 1 compliance officer, and a pair of uniformed financial investigators with identification badges visible on their belts. The room did not laugh this time. The lead attorney approached the stage, opened his portfolio, and looked directly at the headmaster. "Master Bram, my name is Elias Mercer," he said into the sudden silence. "Senior counsel for the Calder Educational Trust and authorized representative of the principal grantor behind the Rowan Nia Foundation endowment attached to Silverthorne Academy." No one seemed to understand the words fast enough. Mercer turned slightly and indicated Marcus with an open hand. "This is Mr. Marcus Vance." A ripple passed through the room. Mercer continued, each word landing with legal precision. "Mr. Vance is the sole controlling authority behind the anonymous donor instruments that funded the Vance Nia Science Hall, the Vance Nia Reading Atrium, the Vance Nia Student Grant Program, the lower campus laboratory renovation, the annual Founders Young Innovator Medal, and the scholarship pool currently administered through the Larkstone Educational Trust." Silence deepened into something heavier. At the front table, Helena Wexler's face lost color by degrees, like a light being turned down. Victor Lang half rose from his chair. "That's absurd." Mercer did not look at him. "It is documented." Margaret Voss stepped forward and placed a sealed folder on the podium in front of Bram. "Tonight," she said, "Mr. Vance attended this event in person because he wished to observe whether Silverthorne Academy still honored the purpose for which his late wife's philanthropic endowments were created." Bram's mouth opened, but no words came out. Mercer went on. "He did not come to ask this institution for a place for his daughter. He came to determine whether this institution still deserved to bear his wife's name." The sentence hit the hall harder than any shout could have. The giant screens behind the stage still displayed Mason Wexler's smiling photo. No one clapped now. No one moved. At the edge of the stage, Maya looked up at her father with stunned confusion. She knew he was capable, strong, quiet, smarter than most adults she met. But this belonged to a category of power he had never let touch her childhood. Marcus glanced down at her and gave her the smallest nod as if to say, "Stay with me." Victor Lang found his voice first. "This is highly irregular," he said, rising fully now. "If there are questions about donor administration, they can be addressed privately through proper channels. There is no need to disrupt a children's ceremony with what?" Marcus asked. He finally stepped forward, taking the microphone from its stand with the same calm he might have used lifting a tool off a workbench. "The consequences." Lang's face tightened. "You cannot hijack school governance because your daughter did not win a competition." A few people in the audience looked uncertainly at one another. They wanted a script. Lang was trying to hand them one. Marcus held up the flash drive Nora had given him. "My daughter did win," he said. "And you stole it from her." He handed the drive to one of the auditors, who passed a tablet to the AV technician near the control booth. A moment later, Mason's photo vanished from the screens, replaced by scanned judging sheets, names, scores, signatures. The first sheet showed the original technical rankings from the science panel. Maya Vance, 98, Mason Wexler, 84. Another page appeared, faculty comments highlighted in yellow, most technically functional design, the lowest cost viable emergency aid model, exceptional independent reasoning for age group. Then came the revised version time-stamped later that night. Maya's presentation score had been reduced by 12 points. A note had been added in administrative language so slippery it looked embarrassed by itself. Concerns regarding representational alignment and donor-facing suitability. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Nora Ellis stood near the side wall, white-faced but upright. Marcus looked at Bram. "Would you like to explain what donor-facing suitability means when applied to a 7-year-old child?" Bram's lips moved. "Mr. Vance, the school considers many factors in selecting student ambassadors." "Ambassadors?" Marcus repeated. "You're talking about a science award. It includes public responsibilities. So does character." Bram swallowed. "You don't understand the pressures of maintaining an institution at this level." A harsh little laugh escaped Marcus then, though there was no humor in it. "No," he said. "I understand exactly. That's the problem." He turned back toward the audience. "My daughter built a working emergency power unit from salvaged parts, a small grant kit, and 6 weeks of effort at our kitchen table. She designed it because she remembers what darkness feels like to children. You replaced her with a polished concept project that failed its own test metrics because his mother promised you money." Helena Wexler stood so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. "That is not true." Mercer lifted another document. Email records between Mrs. Helena Wexler and Headmaster Theodore Bram, copied to Victor Lang, discussing a conditional 7-figure capital gift tied to appropriate placement for her son during tonight's gala. Helena stared at him. "Those communications were private." "Corruption usually prefers privacy," Marcus said. A low sound moved through the audience, now not laughter but shock. Some people began checking phones. Others turned to stare openly at Helena, then at Bram, then at Victor Lang. Lang slammed one hand on the table. "This is a donor misunderstanding, nothing more. Silverthorne's board will review any procedural concerns internally." "Not this time," Marcus said. He gave a slight nod to Margaret Voss, who opened another folder. "Preliminary findings from a restricted audit," she said, her voice crisp as glass, "show repeated discrepancies in the scholarship disbursement accounts managed under Larkstone Authority. Funds designated for need-based science grants were redirected through administrative consulting fees, event expenditures, and discretionary influence allocations." The screen changed again, rows of numbers, grant accounts, transfers, expense codes, one red-marked line after another. Victor Lang's expression changed. The calm vanished all at once. "These are incomplete records," he snapped. "You have no right to parade financial material before parents and children." "Wrong," said the man from Harrowbank at last, his tone dry and final. "The principal sent grantor has every right to review misuse of his own endowment." Another document appeared, student scholarship rosters. On one side were the original faculty recommendations, names of students from modest backgrounds, high scores, documented need. On the other side were the approved recipients. Several names have been swapped: children of donors, children of trustees' friends, Children with no need qualification at all. Someone in the audience gasped loudly. A woman near the middle stood and said, "My son was rejected twice." Another voice followed, "My daughter too." Then another. The hall was waking up all at once. Bram reached for the microphone, but Marcus stepped just out of reach and kept speaking. "I didn't come here to buy respect," he said. "I came to see who had been selling it." The sentence settled over the room like a verdict. He looked at Helena Wexler. "My daughter didn't need my money to be valuable. You needed my money to pretend you were better than her." Helena's face had gone rigid with humiliation. "This is obscene. Mason is a child." "Yes," Marcus said, "which is why you should have let him lose honestly." Mason sat in his chair now, small for the first time all night, staring at his mother with frightened confusion. For one brief second, Marcus felt sorry for him. Then he looked at Maya, still standing with that medal in her hand, and the sympathy passed. Victor Lang tried one last time. "You can't make unilateral decisions over school governance." Mercer answered before Marcus had to. Under Clause 17 of the Endowment Control Instrument, activated tonight by principal review, Mr. Vance can suspend discretionary releases, freeze program authority, compel external audit, and remove trust-linked administrative officers pending investigation. Lang looked as though the floor had opened under him. Margaret Voss turned toward the compliance officers. "As of this moment, all Larkstone scholarship accounts are frozen. Mr. Lang's access credentials are revoked." One of the investigators stepped toward Victor Lang. "Sir, we'll need your phone and badge." Lang did not move. The investigator repeated, "Now." All around the hall, donors and parents watched the man who had spent years speaking about stewardship slowly remove his badge with shaking fingers. Headmaster Bram had begun to sweat visibly. "This can still be managed," he said. "Mr. Vance, if there was a misunderstanding—" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Marcus said. "It was a decision." Bram tried again. "Think of the school's reputation." Marcus's voice stayed level. "I am." He faced the audience once more. Effective immediately, he said, "Headmaster Theodore Bram is suspended pending independent review. Victor Lang is removed from all foundation-linked authority. The scholarship list for this year will be re-examined in full by an external panel. Every competition result altered by donor pressure will be audited. Every student denied recognition or support because they lacked the right surname will be reviewed." Now the hall was utterly silent, the kind of silence that comes when people realize power has changed hands in front of them and there is no way to pretend they did not see it happen. Marcus lowered the microphone for just a second and turned to Maya. Her cheeks were still wet, though she had not noticed tears had finally slipped free. She looked overwhelmed, confused, and terribly small beneath all that crystal and gold. Marcus crouched in front of her. "You did nothing wrong," he said. She stared at him. "You're really in charge?" "Not of everything." A tiny shaky laugh escaped her. "Enough of this," he said. "Now tell me what you want." She glanced at the audience, then at the screens, then at the little medal still in her fingers. "I want them to know it works," she whispered. Marcus nodded once, then let them know. He stood and raised the microphone again. "My daughter will now present the project she actually built," he said. "Anyone who came here to support education is welcome to listen. Anyone who came here to buy outcomes can leave." No one left. Marcus set the microphone stand lower. The AV technician, now suddenly very eager to help, switched the screens to a live camera feed pointed at Maya's display table. Nora Ellis hurried forward from the side with red eyes and careful hands, helping carry the little beacon to center stage. She did not speak, but when Maya looked at her, Nora gave her a look that said, "Go on." Maya swallowed hard. The hall felt enormous around her. "They won't listen to me," she whispered up at Marcus. He bent close enough that only she could hear his answer. "Then make them." He stepped back. For 1 second, she just stood there, hands clenched at her sides, the room full of adults looming beyond the stage lights. Then she took a breath and touched the little folded panel on her device. "My project is called the Little Beacon," she said, her voice thin at first but clear. "It's for when the power goes out." The screen behind her magnified her small brown hands as she opened the solar film wings. In storms or snow or if something breaks, lights can stop working, phones can die, and kids get scared when it's dark. She paused. "I know I do." No one made a sound. "So I wanted to make something cheap enough that regular families could have one, or hospitals, or schools, or buses." It uses sunlight if there is some, and if there isn't, you can turn this handle. She demonstrated, cranking the sidearm. A small white light bloomed from the front panel, and a murmur moved through the technical faculty tables. Maya went on, stronger now. The battery part is sealed because little kids touch everything. And the inside can use salt water backup if the main cell gets too low. It doesn't power a house. It's not supposed to. It powers what matters first. She held up the output cable. A light. A phone. A monitor. Maybe a heater pad for a baby if the voltage gets adjusted right. One of the engineering judges in the third row leaned forward sharply. Maya pointed to the board behind her where her handwritten diagram now filled the screen. My mom used to help sick kids at night, she said softly. And my dad said that when systems fail, simple things save more people because more people can actually use them. So I made it simple. She looked out over the crowd. I don't want any kid to be in a hospital or at school or at home and be scared because everything went dark and nobody planned for them. There it was. No rehearsed polish, no donor-approved charm, just a child saying exactly why she had built something real. For a heartbeat, the room remained still, then one person clapped Nora. After that, one of the original science judges stood and applauded. Then another. The retired faculty woman from the back table rose with both hands red from clapping. A father near the center joined in. Then a cluster of students. Then more parents. Then nearly the whole hall. This time it was not performance. It was recognition. Not everyone clapped. Helena Wexler stood frozen, one hand on the back of her chair, her face carved from humiliation. Headmaster Bram had sunk into his seat like a man shrinking from his own name. Victor Lang was being quietly escorted toward the side doors by the investigators, but the sound that filled the hall belonged to Maya. She looked startled by it, almost disbelieving, then slowly smiled, through the tears she had tried so hard not to shed. Marcus did not clap first, but he waited until she saw the room seeing her, and then he applauded too. Later, after statements had been taken, after Bram had been escorted to a private office with counsel, after parents had erupted into circles of whispering outrage and self-protective revision, after Margaret Voss had begun directing an emergency board session in one of the conference rooms, the hall finally started to empty. Maya sat on the edge of the stage swinging her legs while Marcus packed the little beacon back into its case. The silver medal lay on top now, not hidden. Nora Ellis walked up slowly, still holding a folder against her chest. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said, "and thank you." Marcus looked up. For what? For not letting them bury this. Her eyes moved to Maya, and for making sure she got her moment. Maya smiled shyly. "Thank you for the flash drive," Nora laughed under her breath. "Best thing I copied all year." Margaret Voss crossed the hall then, her heels sharp on the marble floor. "Marcus," she said, low enough for privacy, "the emergency board vote is unanimous. Interim administration will be installed by morning. External review begins at first light. We'll need your signature on the suspension orders." He nodded. "Send them to the house." She glanced at Maya and her expression softened. "Your wife would have been proud tonight." For the first time that evening, something inside. Marcus shifted. "Yeah," he said quietly, a faint smile touching his warm brown face. She would have. When they finally stepped outside, the air was colder. The drive that had sparkled with status when they arrived now looked almost ordinary. Cars were just cars again. Stone was just stone. Light was just light. His pickup waited where he had left it, old and square and honest under the lamps. Maya climbed into the passenger seat with the medal around her neck and the project case on her lap. She was quiet until he started the engine. Then she turned to him. "Dad?" "Yeah, Bug? Were you always rich?" He smiled a little, his eyes on the windshield. "No," he said. Then he glanced at her. "But I was always your father. That mattered more." She thought about that seriously, the way she thought about everything. Did Mom know? She knew enough. Maya nodded and rested her head against the seat. After a minute, she asked, "Are they going to fix the school?" Marcus put the truck in gear. "They're going to have to." As they rolled down the drive, he looked once in the rearview mirror at Silverthorne Academy glowing against the night. By morning, there would be lawyers, headlines in certain circles, panic calls, resigned statements, and the sudden moral awakening of people who had said nothing until it became expensive. There would be audits, removals, refunds, new panels, new rules, but beyond all that, there would be children. Children whose names had not opened doors before, Children whose projects looked homemade because they were children who needed scholarship money for books and bus fare and lab kits, not gala centerpieces. Children like the one buckled into the seat beside him, still small enough that the medal's ribbon looked oversized against her dress. Tonight had not made Silverthorne worthy. It had simply ended the lie that it already was. Marcus drove out through the gate, where the guard now stood painfully straight, not daring to wave them down, and on to the dark road home. Beside him, Maya touched the medal once, then the latch on her project case, then finally his sleeve. They really listened, she said, almost to herself. Marcus rested one hand over hers for a moment on the seat between them. Yeah, he said, they did. And after tonight, this school would no longer belong to people who used money to purchase dignity. It would belong again to the children who earned their chance, needed the light, and were brave enough to build it for themselves.